a code red for humanity. Curb emissions and dramatically reduce consumption or face a world that is fundamentally different.
When Kermit the Frog sang, "It's not easy being green," I want you to know that he was wrong. He was wrong.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, 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 blah.
It is unequivocal that human activities are responsible for climate change.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon.
East Hall.
Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista, Series 3, The Sky's the Limit. I'm Ian Collins, and this is the UK's number one environment-based podcast. If it's green, it's in. It's timely as we near the end of Series 3 that shenanigans at Westminster are reaching some dizzy and unsavoury heights. This is, of course, hugely relevant to the kind of things we talk about on this podcast. Let's speak to our man in the know. The big question, though, is he Team Rishi or Team Truss? I think we know the answer, Dale. Morning.
Morning, Ian. How's things?
Yeah, neither. Can I just preempt you? Neither is the answer.
Yeah, I would say neither. I certainly, before I watched the debate they had last night on TV, which, I expected to be entertained by, and I have to say I was. But I come away from that thinking, do you know what? I think I'm more Team Truss than Team Sunak, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, both have committed to net zero, which was interesting.
Yeah, I found he interrupted and talked over her constantly, and I found that really annoying.
It's a bit rude, actually, wasn't it?
It was rude, yeah. And she was really super patient. She didn't even mention it. She didn't say, "Let me finish," even once, I don't think, which I would have done.
That's right.
Absolutely. And, he seemed desperate to tell these long stories about his, working class background, how he worked in his mother's pharmacy. And,
which, by the way, a lot of that is bollocks because, yes, he did. His grandparents certainly came over to this country and would have had very little. But by the time it got to young Rishi being hatched, they were doing just fine. Thank you very much.
I was going to say.
And that's fine as well. That's their story and that's cool. But to sort of try and dress it up as if he worked down the pit
that's the problem.
is...
that's the problem.
I worked in my parents' pharmacist is possibly the most middle-class thing I've heard this week.
That's right. While attending a £50,000 a year school, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, tough times for Rishi and his sibling.
Yeah, absolutely.
There we go. We've got, talking of net zero, court orders government to explain how it will reach net zero targets. This is interesting because there's a lot of, it's all very well, isn't it? Our leaders say, yes, absolutely, I'm committed to net zero. And it's become now... I've long thought this quite a danger zone, really, because saying it is very, very easy. Yeah. I'm committed to net zero. Yeah. Getting there and explaining how you're getting there is a little bit trickier.
Yeah, that's right. And I think I've said on here a few times, I certainly said it somewhere a few times, having the targets is one thing. That's great. We've got the targets enshrined in law. That's a big step, but we don't have the policies to hit them. And that's the missing thing, and the government have kind of done the big visible kind of tick in the box easy part by embracing net zero, but they haven't done the hard work, which is to create the policies. It's not even that hard, actually, but they haven't created the policies to get us there. And the court called it out and said, look, you actually are obliged by law to explain how you're going to get there. That's part of the Climate Act. So again, we have the legal system to our rescue when the government, our government goes rogue, which is like all the time. And those naughty lefty judges have stepped in to put them in line.
Swines. Yeah. And what's interesting as well is that you've got this curious situation now where whoever becomes the leader, they don't start this gig until September. So that gives them just a little over 18 months until the next general election. I mean, Chelsea managers last longer than that. So you've got 18 months in the job, and then, the smart money says the Tories will lose the next election. So.
Yeah, that's how it looks so far, because there's the possibility that whoever wins this contest calls a snap election, hoping that the bounce from a new leader, gives them a little bit of an edge in the election, rather than wait 18 months while everything will get worse in the next 18 months. We'll see the new winter fuel bills. Rishi was dismissing that last night. That was dishonest of him. He said, we don't yet know where the price cap will take fuel bills this winter. That is not true. We do know, because the mechanism Ofgem uses prices from the market that have already happened. We're 90% there to knowing what prices will be. And it's, it's way north of £3,000. So that ain't getting better. Inflation ain't getting better. We're going to have a winter of strikes and discontent everywhere. And, Brexit ain't getting better either, obviously. That was a telling thing. They were both asked the question at the end, are the queues in Dover to do with Brexit? And they like competed to be first and loudest to say no.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, we know you're playing to the crowd here, the 160,000, white old men crowd in the south of England. But come on, what's it due to then? What's caused it?
As my old nan used to say, what a crock of shit.
Yeah.
Covers it nicely, really. Covers it nicely. Here's a question that came in from Dawn on Twitter. How come Ecotricity doesn't feature on Uswitch's greenest tariffs of 2022? There's surely an answer to that one, Dale.
Yeah, I think we don't pay them.
Is that how you get on the list?
It's as simple as that. Absolutely. You pay them. I mean, these guys are, they're pimps, aren't they? I mean, there's nothing honest and third party about these brokers online. Do you know what I mean? It's been that way for years. If you don't pay, they don't stick you on their list, don't give you prominence and stuff like that.
It's kind of like when you look in a magazine, it says we've reviewed the 5 best aftershaves, and you think, no, you've been sent the 5 best aftershaves, and based on how much of it was sent to you, will base on where you place them in the listings.
Yeah, I didn't realize that any of those switching sites were active online at the moment because, if you look at the tariffs that energy companies are offering, the price cap may about to become north of $3,000, but right now energy companies are offering north of $4,000 to new customers, and so nobody's switching, nobody's moving. So the switching sites are presumably suffering badly. Well, we can hope. Can hope because they didn't do the market any favors.
Is it going better in the States? Because I saw this story that Biden has unveiled this like £2.3 billion plan to tackle climate change. And obviously we always have to be wary when politicians announce money because you think, hang on, is some of that already been announced? Is it completely new money? Is it enough money?
Is it coming this decade as well as another trick?
Well, yeah, when as well is the answer.
Well, yeah, my first thought is this. He's already given more money than that to Ukraine.
True, good point.
So which is the bigger threat to the world?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Biden is kind of trying to dine out on the, I'm not Trump. Well, we get that. And neither is anybody else. But is it still woeful stateside? Because we talk about China, we talk about India all the time, but you can't have those conversations without mentioning the United States.
Yeah. Again, last night, there was a moment in which Rishi referred to the United States to say, did Liz Truss know what was happening over there? I forget the topic. And I was waiting for her to jump in and say, well, if I had a US green card, I may know more about the United States, Mr. Sunak. But
Indeed.
they didn't go down there, did they? Not quite to that level of bashing each other.
I've got the answer to it all, though, Dale. I've got the answer to everything. Are you ready for this?
No? I mean, yes.
It's that word again. Fracking. Get fracking, because if we get fracking, it will reduce our energy bill. So everything you've just been talking about, it's 3,000 quid here. Do a bit of fracking, for goodness sake, and your bills will be about £3.50.
Yeah, and look,
except that's not true.
No, except that's pile of horseshit, right? But they were asked, they may have committed to net zero, as you say, and yet we don't have the policies to hit net zero, as the courts have said. But they were asked a question, what are the 3 things we all need to do to fight the climate crisis? And I was waiting for energy, transport, food. Come on, that's your perfect opportunity. And, Rishi's like, first thing was like, I don't know, use less. And then he's like, my daughters are the experts on this. We recycle in our family. We're obsessed with recycling. And I thought you were trivializing, actually, what we all need to do to fight the climate crisis. And I was a bit disappointed by that.
And interesting, when we read that fracking won't actually reduce your energy bills, I don't know what I've said this before, haven't I? It's only because it's called this onomatopoeic sense of the word fracking, which sounds like you're tough and hard. Yeah. What are you doing? Frack, you bastard. It says everything. Frack till you can frack no more. Yeah. If it was called peddling or something, people wouldn't be talking about it. But it's fracking. Yeah, I think it's hard, isn't it?
It's part of that. It's like nuclear energy that costs billions of pounds, big, expensive, and tough. You're right. There was a report out last week, though, from another body of scientists actually that reviewed the data on our fracking reserves, and they reckon we've just got a handful of years at best. Which undermines the whole thing. But of course, also, it doesn't matter how much fossil fuels we produce here. We pay a global global price for them because we allow the market, the world market, to set the price. So 50% of our gas this winter came from the North Sea, but we paid the world price for it, 4 times more than the year before, making bumper profits for the oil companies and making energy bills unaffordable for millions. Yeah, why?
So why do we have to pay more for it? What's the specific reason?
It's the free market dogma, isn't it, that says that we're part of the global commodity market. It's all about supply and demand. We let markets set the price, and governments have become subservient to corporations in that respect and to this thing called markets, which have a life of their own, but it's all really about making money for traders.
Yeah. Greenpeace, and this is an interesting one. Greenpeace say that the climate emergency is a legacy of colonialism. Now, this one, that statement alone is going to divide the room, right?
Maybe Greenpeace are taking lessons from the Tories and thought they'd start their own culture war.
Could be that. Are you buying into that?
I mean, not massively. I mean, everything's connected to everything in the past.
I mean, it's beyond, because if colonialism is, if it's talking about the British Empire, then of course, climate issues transcend just geographically that region anyway.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's got its roots in the Industrial Revolution. There ain't no doubt about that. The mass burning of fossil fuels has been going on for 150, 200 years. That's it. This is simply that. We've been unlocking carbon that was locked up millions and billions of years ago and releasing into the atmosphere, unbalancing.
But isn't that interesting? When all of that happened and they were churning out smokes that were billowing from large chimneys and working with steels and metals and cotton mills and all of the things that kind of took people into a new world of the most significant event in history. This was, of course, seen as the thing that freed up the human race, the thing that took everybody into the first time we had a kind of pro-capitalist system, if you like, the factory line, the industrial scale of production, etc. And little did they know then that they were kind of carving up their own doom. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. There was a mass movement of people from the countryside to towns and cities as well, wasn't there, to take jobs in factories instead of jobs on farms. It was a kind of definitely an industrialization. And I think, fair play, it did to a degree free us up, actually. It created wealth, it created development and technology, it enabled that. And I see no harm in the fact that it happened. I think it's just important that we move quickly now to the next industrial revolution, which is powered by renewable energy and electrified transport and that kind of stuff. So, it's on the development path of our species. We just need to put it behind us now rather quickly.
Yeah. Since we last spoke, of course, we've had a heat wave, and we're told there's more kind of heat wavy stuff to come. Richard on Facebook says, how should I respond to idiots who keep telling me the heat wave was no different to 1976? Well, it was bloody hot in 1976. I remember this as a kid. It was like summer holiday, walking around with, hardly anything on because it was so darn hot. What's the difference?
I remember it too, but it was 4 or 5 degrees cooler in 1976. I mean, that's a lot of temperature difference, 4 or 5 degrees. It did go on for longer, for a couple of months instead of a couple of days. But what didn't happen was London wasn't on fire because of it. All right. The fire brigade in London had their busiest day since World War II in that heat wave. I mean, literally, fires were popping up across London. We had wildfires in London. I mean, my God, how crazy does it have to get before people realize this is not normal? This is not what summers are.
Yes, I mean, it's the first, somebody said, the first time we've really seen the climate cause fires. We see it in other countries. Exactly. When I first saw those stories, I was at work on the radio, and I remember I looked up at the screens and I thought it was like a story from Australia or Italy or something. And then, I jokingly said to my producer, I hope it's not Sevenoaks. And he went, no, it's Dartford. It's like, what? Seriously? Which, by the way, is next to Sevenoaks for those who don't know. But I thought, seriously? I thought he was joking. And then, of course, throughout the next couple of hours, within a moment of hearing that story, there was a housing estate that had kind of caught fire. We're talking about homes destroyed here.
Yeah, on the same day, Sunak, the man who would like to be our prime minister, declared he would maintain the ban on onshore windmills. I mean, you couldn't get a greater kind of disconnect, a reality disconnect. Wildfires burning London, and the man that wants to be prime minister says, yeah, but we don't want these unsightly windmills. Yeah, perfect.
This is a bloke playing to 0.2% of the population or something, i.e. that, 200,000 Tories who can vote in. So let's be as kind of stupid as we can to appease this one contingent. And it's probably not all of those people that think that anyway. just some of them, but they seem to be very loud. They want bloody windmills coming round here with your windmills. Who do you think you are? It's really, it's like, no, this will give you some like free energy, essentially.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It's not always windy, is it? Huh? Answer that.
But it is how we fight the climate crisis and the energy price crisis at the same time.
Yeah.
Make our own from renewable energy, disconnect from global commodity markets. There is no global price for wind energy. There just isn't one, right? Because it gets used where it gets made, whereas fossil fuels get shipped all around the world. So, when the demand is higher in one part of the world and they're willing to pay more money for it, the supertankers literally just divert themselves en route to a higher paying bidder. It's crazy.
I think you're being a little bit unfair, though, Dale, on the oil and the gas industry because, these guys are struggling as well. So,
I know where this is going.
Everybody needs to make a profit. And I'm just reading here. This is profit per day, by the way. Yes. So not profit per year or per decade. Yeah. Profit per day. They've taken a bit of a hit over there at Oil and Gas HQ because their daily profit, pure profit is down to 2.3 billion a day. So have a heart, Dale.
For 50 years.
For 50 years, yes.
Every day for 50 years globally. An incredible sum of money.
So come on, give them a break. They've got to feed their kids.
This is what's funding the oil and gas mafia globally, right? Because they've got the money to buy every policy, every politician, to influence research, to, create think tanks with shadowy links to the oil and gas industry. That happens all the time, doesn't it? Think tank comes up with a report and somebody goes, oh, by the way, who funds you? Oh, no. Well, yeah, it may have been the oil and gas industry, but there's no connection.
True. Fran on LinkedIn says, I'd like to hear guests on your podcast or maybe just some interview specials. What do you think?
I think she's saying we're crappy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I'd like to hear other voices other than you two, essentially. That's what Fran is saying here. And, of course, we should point out that Dale and I don't really like other people. So there is that as well to deal with. We have talked about this because we did do a few... Didn't we in the early days do a couple of specials? Didn't we have Chris Packham on and I think a couple of others?
Yeah, we've got Jon Snow next week.
Jon Snow will be with us next week. Now, there you go. That kind of covers, but that buys us back some points, surely.
Yeah.
The mighty Snow is appearing because we're live in WOMAD.
Yeah, live in WOMAD. Yeah.
On a stage.
Yes. Perfect.
Are you going to walk on like the bloke from Elbow and get the crowd going down?
I don't know who he is.
Speaks well of you, I think.
I'll be hobbling on with my broken
the hobble.
Right foot.
Yeah. Do you think Jon Snow will have one of his impressive ties on?
Does he wear impressive? I've never noticed.
Well, when he reads the news, but doesn't read the news anymore, so I think
I don't watch telly anyway.
Yeah, I think he's coming in a sort of safari thing. But he's always entertaining.
Yeah, he's good conversation, John.
Definitely. So he'll be with us on the WOMAD episode, which will complete this series, of course. So this is our last normal one, isn't it, this episode? And then next week will be the WOMAD episode. So, And then you go off on your helicopter to your private island.
That's right. My coal-fired chopper.
Yes, it's got and helicopter run by coal. That's the real story here. What do you make of this story? Dutch farmers fighting back against huge cuts to livestock. This is interesting, isn't it? Because as I understand it, this is a kind of a nitrogen argument, right? Where farmers have been told, look, you've got to cut back on essentially emissions or the kind of things you use. And Dutch farmers have gone, hang on a second, you're asking me to cut back on my living, essentially.
Yeah, what I make of this is that it's a great initiative from the Dutch government to recognize the problem and do something about it rather than, avoid it like our government does. And a 30% cut in livestock is what they've asked for. Holland's a relatively small country, relatively crowded by industrial animal farming, or intensive anyway. And nitrogen is a problem. It's a climate problem as well, of course, ruminants, grazing cows. So, I mean, for me, it was just like perfect. And yeah, of course, farmers are going to say, well, what am I going to do if I can't raise cows? And it is important to find something for them to do, not do a Thatcher and just shut the coal mines and don't care where everybody goes, but create a transition for farmers. And this is where green gas actually comes in, because farmers that grow grass to feed cows and cause problems could be growing grass to feed gas mills to create green gas to replace fossil gas, which, by the way, a lot of Europe's comes from Russia, which is a different problem. And so the transition for farmers that we need is to be found in green gas. And that's quite often the way with this move to the this next industrial revolution, that we're going to create new industries and new jobs and new opportunities for the people that give up the old ways of doing things.
But does that mean, in the meantime, I mean, is it just a harsh reality that if you said to a lot of farmers will tell you that the profit margins are so tiny these days through all sorts of reasons, supermarket contracts and goodness knows what else, that if you take a third of somebody's stock away, that's the difference between sinking and swimming?
Well, it may well be, but I think the difference between sinking and swimming in animal agriculture, particularly grazing them, is wafer thin anyway. And these guys are better off just biting the bullet and giving it up, actually, finding something else to do. And there definitely are options.
Here's an interesting one. A 17-minute flight, says the headline, the super rich who have absolute disregard for the planet. And this is Kylie Jenner. I know that you're au fait with the Kardashians and the Jenners and all of that. I know you love it all. But apparently took a trip on a private jet that lasted 17 minutes.
Yeah.
You can't make this up.
Well, you can, or you can't. You don't need to. Let's say that. Was it Manchester United last year? Took a 10-minute flight to a footy game in England. This is what the rich do. I mean, they're responsible for well over half of the world's emissions, the super rich, and this is why that we can't apply climate costs, whether they're taxes or whatever they are. We can't apply them evenly because they're disproportionately hitting people lower down the income chain that have normal carbon footprints. We've got to tax the mad carbon footprints from the people that fly all over the world, or just for 17 minutes.
Fair point.
and have the huge carbon footprints, and they can afford to pay as well. So, why not?
And just to reiterate, Dale, WOMAD, Saturday, 30th of July, we'll be there and the podcast out the following week. I mean, it's a big festival anyway, isn't it? The fact that we're going to be there on the Ecotricity stage from 11, along with Jon Snow, recording a podcast. We want the crowd involved as well on that. But the whole festival is a pretty tasty event to attend anyway.
Yeah, it's a fab festival. Next day, of course, Forest Green play their very first game in League One, away to Bristol Rovers.
Wow, there's two great things to look forward to. Dale, I'll see you on stage.
Nice one.
Actors actually say I'll see you on the green. Did you know that?
No.
When they're about, I don't know where it comes from.
They say break a leg as well, but you don't have to say that to me.
No, you've done that bit, and I'll see you on the green.
Yeah.
Cheers, Dale.
That
is it for this episode. Of course, don't forget to follow this podcast from your podcast provider so you get each new episode automatically, and leave a review there too. Do follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/Dale Vince, facebook.com/Dale Vince.
Zero carbon.
East off.